Hey everyone, welcome to 30 Ways to Happy Days. I'm Alana Yvonne with Truly Great Life, and we are on way number 8. This is the character strength of fairness. So, as I like to remind you, if you have not yet looked at way 1 and way 2, I highly encourage you to, because it does give the framework and the foundation for the rest of these 30 ways. All right, so fairness is a biggie. And I'm sure when I even say the word fairness, different things are coming up for you about what that means. But let's be on the same page here with how positive psychology describes fairness, at least. And so we'll take it from that lens, okay? So according to the field of positive psychology, fairness can be explained as giving everybody a fair chance, caring about what's right, treating people the way you want to be treated, okay? Relating to others in a fair and just way. So there's this also aspect of justice, which is another whole biggie. That could be its own video too, but we'll bring it in here. Basically trying to treat everyone equally, okay? So another way to say it would be like adhering to the principles of justice. And this one is like, really not letting feelings influence your decisions. All right, how many people here are already like, well, we're not, I'm not seeing that in this situation or that situation or in this example. Like if fairness is keeping feelings out of it on some level, then that means fairness is really more about the critical thinking strength that we talked about earlier. It's not saying feelings don't matter and don't have a place, but according to this definition, fairness is where the feelings do not bias, they don't impact or influence a decision. Maybe they can be a variable, right? Context is important, but so that's an interesting thing, because I think as human beings, a lot of the times, and depending on the nature of the decision, our feelings influence a lot of them. A lot of us are driven by our feelings and not necessarily using our critical thinking muscle, our critical thinking strength that we talked about earlier in our decision making. So fairness is not letting the feelings we may have about something impact the way we look at something or decide about something. So it's kind of an even-handedness. All right. So already, if you don't live in a cave, there is so much about fairness in the world, as has always been for thousands of years. You just need to look at different religions or philosophies or approaches to this idea of justice and this idea of fairness and this idea of what is right and how do decisions get made and how do judgments get made and how are things decided. And it's people's sense of what is fair or not fair that can sometimes lead to different interactions, policies, decisions, right? This is like, fairness is a big topic. It's something that we hear a lot about for a variety of reasons in a variety of situations and contexts. Here we're talking about fairness as an actual character strength. And what that means is each and every human being has that muscle, has that strength in them, right? That ability to treat people the way they would want to be treated, the ability to look at things from an even-handed kind of point of view, to bring in the concept of like justice, thinking about things from a perspective of more critical thinking. You can see how fairness and critical thinking kind of go hand in hand, and less emotional. So this is taking it from like the macro, right? A lot of times we think about fairness on the macro level. A lot of times we think about fairness in the micro level in terms of like, so macro would be like big policies that impact a lot of people or world events or, decisions, things like that are on like that have an impact on a wide variety of people, a larger number of people. And let's say on the micro, it's like, within your family, and siblings are treated differently, right? So there can be a sense of fairness or unfairness in like, why does little, Betty get this and little whatever example you want to come up with. I'm sure if you look back at your own childhood, okay, whether or not you have a sibling, there's probably like some memory you can come up with of where something didn't feel fair, right? So this feeling of lack of fairness being applied to us as individuals in a situation, in a classroom, on the playing field, in a sport, getting the opportunity in a play, right? In your own personal life, whatever it is, you know that feeling of like, oh, it's just not fair. Like I worked so hard, or I did everything right. Okay, one example I'll give is, part of my work is as a career coach, and I work with young adults who are out of college, and some of them have this sense of, that feeling of like unfairness, you could say, where it's, I followed all the steps I was supposed to, and then, things didn't work out the way I was led to believe they could, or it wasn't necessarily the path to success that I was, for whatever reason, led to believe it is. And now I don't even know what I want to do, or it didn't take me into consideration. So the fairness aspect, right? I will just say that a lot of parents, and I'm a parent, it's interesting, I haven't thought about this before. How much fairness do we as parents bring into our parenting? Sometimes it's easy when you're managing siblings, let's say, or a play date, or, something outside. But how about our own expectations that we may or may not even be aware of as parents, that we may project onto or expect from our kids without even being aware of it? How fair is that? How much are we able to support, our children in their decisions separate from our feelings about it, if it's really maybe like the right thing for them? I'm going a little bit on a tangent here, but okay, so fairness, right, is a muscle. It's a strength that you have. And when we look at fairness, not just as it was really unfair when I was a kid and this thing happened, or it was really unfair at work and this happened, or it's really unfair that this policy is happening, whatever it is, wherever you are, now it's about how do we bring this in for ourselves in terms of using fairness now that we're aware that it's actually a strength, this ability to be fair, okay? It's just to be fair, to give everyone the equal opportunity to, play in the game, or participate in a project, or, join in lunch. I don't know. And you can think of examples from movies, you can think of examples from books, you can think of plenty of examples from your own life or those of others that you know about. But when we see that we have that capacity to be fair, right? It's putting like that sense of agency in ourselves. Like, I can do something about it, let's say, even if everything else feels unfair right now, right? Sometimes, people feel like, why me? Universe, why me? Oh God, why me, right? It's not fair. And if you, depending on your religious beliefs or your spiritual beliefs, there's a ton out there that talks to this, okay? But what if we can reframe this and understand fairness is a muscle that I have and I can use to turn my day around? So, for example, there was some kind of sense of injustice that you feel, and you didn't get, let's say, a promotion for whatever, reason, or you didn't, make it in there. The question can become, okay, this happened. How can I use my strength of fairness to maybe look at it a different way or take a lesson from it? So that would mean taking, for example, the emotion out of it for yourself. So you're probably feeling feelings of disappointment, of hurt, sadness, loss, maybe fear, right? So what emotions are coming up, and then how can you reframe it, maybe using this strength of fairness by almost stepping outside of yourself to look at the situation again? Well, if I'm going to be honest about it, the person who got that promotion, assuming it's a fair, assuming it's, reasonable, right? Whatever your situation is, like, they had more experience, or they were the better person for the job, or, making the sports team, or making the play, or getting that, scholarship or award, or whatever it is. Like, can you use your strength of fairness to look at it from a more objective standpoint, despite the hurt. And it's not to negate the feelings around something you may be disappointed in. It's about almost expanding. When we use these character strengths, it can expand our ability to see things in the world and to see situations and see people beyond our blinders, right? So if you can make space, right, for looking at, in this case, like decisions that were made and taking yourself out of it, can you see how maybe it was a right decision, or maybe it was a right call in the game? Or even if it wasn't, can you be fair to yourself, right? And recognize that you're feeling that, and then also like maybe stretch it out a little bit and say, what can I do about this for next time? So if the game is rigged, I don't know if you saw War Games, but it's like the only way to win is not to play. Okay, so if you know that a system or a game is like not going to be in your favor, what do you do about it? You can bring your fairness into that. Is it fair for you to stay? I mean, there's a lot of different things that we can discuss here, or you can think about, but let's simplify it with how can you be fair to yourself? Okay, how can you use that kind of strength of, it would be incorporating the critical thinking, right? Where you're making decisions for yourself, not just based on your feelings, but also like the facts, or also like a careful analysis of looking at the bigger picture and things like that. Okay, so this is fairness. It's an interesting one to think of it as a character strength as opposed to something that is out there that other people have to give me, right? It is something out there that a system has to be, and it is, and it should, and people take steps to make that happen. But we can also do it on an individual level, right? To be fair in our interactions with others, to be fair in our assessment of others if we're, working with other people at work or in school. So when when I think of it on like a bigger scale, it can almost be overwhelming, right? I come from a faith that has a very big focus on justice and how do we achieve justice, and it's a big one. It's a big one, and it's a struggle. And what is just and what is fair, right? So that doesn't mean we don't get involved and we don't do what we can to really be fair and just to those that we are in relationship with, that we are responsible for, that we are involved in, right? Whatever those causes, individuals, organizations may be. But we can also use this strength, how about we take it smaller, right? I think one of the exciting things about all of these different ways to be happier, when we are looking at the big picture and when we're looking on the macro level, it's easy to see the negative. One of the things about positive psychology is like it recognizes that the negative is big and strong and it's easy to see. It's easy to point fingers at it. It's a lot harder in many situations to see the good. It's a lot harder to focus on that good, to try to model that good, to try to be the good, and to try to put that out there, because it is easier. We're wired that way to look for the threats, right? We are wired that way to look for the danger, for survival. So even though we're in these incredibly unbelievable technological times and who only knows what is lying ahead, we're still wired from like gazillion years ago, right? I mean, we are wired, and overcoming that wiring is a deliberate, conscious practice. You got to be aware, A, that it's possible, and B, you got to want it. If you don't want it, then, there's nothing to talk about. But if you want to be more positive, if you want to be happier, it requires effort, because for a lot of us, we are just wired to see things a certain way, just as humans, right? And so this fairness, let's be fair to ourselves also. And let's use fairness, let's be fair to ourselves knowing that it's a challenge to, just be in the world today. It's not as simple as it was in generations past. There's a lot of, information out there, a lot of distractions, a lot of things vying for your attention. It is my sincere hope with these recordings that this is enriching or benefiting or teaching or helping you in some way. This is not meant to be a distraction at all. I hope it's not. So where can we feel our own personal power is okay, what do I have influence in? Where are the places that I can make a change that might be helpful, right? And so that's your nuclear whatever. So it's who are the people, who are the causes, what are the things, organizations that you are intimately involved in, and can you bring your strength of fairness there? You can practice that. So practice that in your relationship with your significant other, or with your friends, or with your family, or with your kids, or with your colleagues, and just try to incorporate that into your interactions on the micro, right? On the very, very very, very small, if you will, and it's everything, but it's when we think about how do we achieve fairness and justice on a large level, that's already getting into much bigger things that we may not feel we have really control of or influence in. I think it contributes it can contribute to a sense of upset or despair for many people because they see all the, it's easy to see a lot of the problems, and then what can I do about it, and all the injustice, and how do I contribute to what is fair and just? Okay, so these are big things. One thing I wanted to share also is there are 3 kinds of fairness. All right, so fairness isn't just what we've been talking about. There are different kinds of fairness. So the first one is, and think about something in your life right now that you're dealing with, or someone you're dealing with, or a project, and there's something about fairness here. How do I help contribute to fair outcomes in this project or this relationship, or where it's just gonna feel like it was handled well and respectfully for everyone. I just want to make sure that I include this is also if thinking about the higher, bigger ideas around fairness is not helpful, then just in the relationships, we all want to be treated fairly. What does it mean to be treated fairly? Okay, give me some credit, or give me a chance, and so you get to use your strength of fairness in treating people the way you want to be treated. Okay, how do you want to be treated? What does being treated fairly look like for you? In your personal, in your professional, in your community. What does that look like for you? And how can you start treating people like that? Okay, assuming it's a healthy, positive, way that you want to be treated fairly, right? How can you just start, we have to give in order to get. So are you giving fairness to others in your interaction with them? And then that opens up the ways for you to receive. Okay. So going back here to the 3 types of fairness, again, think about what's going on for you. How can I be, a channel or a vessel or an example of a model of fairness? Okay. And this is something you can do by modeling for, again, if you have a family, model it for your kids. What does that look like? How do you speak to people when you're out doing your errands? How do you speak to people when you're shopping, right? Do you treat them fairly the way you would want to be treated? When you're at a restaurant, ordering from the server, right? How do you treat people? So that right there is one example of how you can bring that strength of fairness and practice using it in an interaction that you're likely to have at least one of every day or two, right? You're interacting with a stranger, you're interacting with someone that you don't have a relationship with, other than that, let's say, transactional relationship. How can you use your strength of fairness in that instance? And that could be a fun way to just start exercising that muscle. Okay, the 3 types of fairness, just want to bring this up. See where it like gets you thinking. So one is called procedural justice, and this is about the methods used, and the methods are fair. So that would be like, procedural. Okay, self-explanatory. Second one is distributive justice, and this is where what ultimately happens at the end of it, right, is fair. So procedural is the methods, right, the ways in which things are getting done, it's fair. This is then, distributive is where the end result is fair. And then the third one is interactional. And this is where people are treated with dignity and respect when policies and procedures are implemented. Okay, that is the definition I have here. So here's the question. Okay, fairness, not a very sexy sounding strength, right? Like love and social intelligence, this is definitely a mind strength. This is not a heart strength, okay? You can incorporate heart and feelings into it, but again, fairness is about keeping feelings out of it when you make decisions, for example. So this is a very more intellectual strength, but again, everyone has that sense of fairness. Like a baby knows when something doesn't feel fair, right? Little kids know that's not fair, whatever it is. So we are wired on some level. We have that sense of what it feels like to be treated fairly. And when we feel like we're being treated fairly, we can accept outcomes and results because, I was treated fairly there. Okay? It's when we feel that we're not treated fairly that it's frustrating and people can get upset. So whatever you have going on in your life, think about fairness in this way. And then again, okay, in my day-to-day, how can I be more fair? Maybe I haven't really been, fair in the way I let my daughter do this, let my son do this, and the other one no. Maybe I can be a little bit more fair there, a little bit more even-handed, okay? And if you work with people or you're a student and you're working, can you bring fairness in there? This also obviously ties into power in relationships and how fairness gets determined. So, think about it in your own situation. Where can you today take this very interesting character strength of fairness and start exercising that muscle, okay? And you can bring the other strengths of critical thinking into this, how else can I see this, right? And how else, so this is also empathy in a sense, because if you want to be treating someone fairly, if you want to be treated fairly, that's recognizing the value of the other person, right? That's the appreciation of another person as well. I think fairness ties in with an appreciation and a recognition of every human being. Does that make sense? This is all just coming to me, but I think there's something there about seeing the other people as people, okay? Just as much as you're a person, so is that other person. And especially in cases where we have differences and may disagree, how can you bring the character strength of fairness into it? Because again, these strengths, we all have them, and we can, if we choose to, use them as a lens of empathy and understanding and appreciation of differences in others, okay? So if you feel something in your life right now isn't fair, what can you do to look at it, to understand it now that we've gone a little bit deeper into what fairness maybe is and isn't? And then how can you be fair to yourself and give yourself the, whatever it is you may need to reconsider and consider all the possibilities of whatever it is you're dealing with. And also, and then, work on integrating the feelings part after you've understood a little better or contemplated a little more on the possibilities of what else is going on in your situation. So again, I'm trying to keep this really high level, but hopefully this is something that you can see is actually a way to make you happier in your day, because the ability to use that muscle of fairness is a gift to others that you're going to interact with by recognizing the good in them and modeling that, right? It's like a respect thing almost, when you treat someone fairly, it's like a respect thing as well. And by modeling that, you can hopefully inspire that example for that person to also continue to maybe tweak their use of their fairness muscle, their fairness character strength in a way that they hadn't thought of. Us as individuals treating people fairly, treating people the way we would want to be treated. In the Jewish text, there's a line about like that which is hateful to you, don't do to another, okay? And that is like fairness on some level. That is justice on some level. These are just things to get you started thinking about it. Again, I hope this was helpful, and see you next time for way number 9. Have a good one.